What's up everyone, Piscean here. In this video, we are going to talk about lunations, malefics, and history. This is a compendium of new and full moons in all signs, as well as malefic aspects and malefic midpoints and historical global event charts. Alright, so we see the new moon on our left, conjunction of luminaries, the sun and moon. Then we see the full moon is in opposition of luminaries. And we're going to talk about syzygies, hard aspects of Mars and Saturn, sensitive midpoints correlated with collective turning points, visuals, appendices, and glossary. Please like, subscribe, comment, share, dare, and care with peace and love. And yeah, here to bring you advanced astrology for free. And I'm not getting views or paid for it, so yeah, fuck me, right? But anyways, it's not even about that. It's just about whoever discovers this video in like 10 years or something, if YouTube's even still a thing. Which it probably won't be, but yeah. Alright, so this video is not going to be too very long, just going to be a few pages we're going over. So first is the introduction, lunations and the malefics and mundane work. Every new moon and full moon is a syzygy, an alignment of the luminaries. When these monthly events fall in particular signs, and especially when they are configured by hard aspect to Mars or Saturn or fall upon a Mars-Saturn midpoint, they frequently coincide with measurable collective stress, the outbreak or intensification of conflict, economic contraction, institutional failure, or mass emotional reaction. In this compendium recognizes 3 interlocking layers of testimony. So we're looking specifically for lunations by sign and element, the basic monthly tone of the collective psyche, malefic aspects, conjunctions, squares, oppositions, and the minor hard aspects of Mars and Saturn that the luminaries were to each other at the time of the lunation or the event. Malefic midpoints, especially the Mars-Saturn midpoint, long recognized in both traditional and modern practice as an axis of endurance, force, hardship, and structural pressure. Historical case studies illustrate how these factors combine in charts of major global events. The approach is correlative and traditional in spirit. The lunation sets the stage, the malefics supply the friction, and the midpoint oftentimes the precise release. So these are the main discussion points. Sorry for all the noise. Alright, so we're looking at new and full moons in all 12 signs. So a new moon marks the beginning, a seeding of intention or crises. We see a full moon marks culmination, exposure, or harvest. The sign colors the collective theme, and below is a practical mundane key for each sign followed by elemental grouping. So this is the sign by sign mundane key. And we see Aries to Pisces. So red is going to be our fire triplicity, and then green is going to be our earth triplicity. Air triplicity is going to be pink, and water triplicity is going to be orange. So we see, for specifically fire signs, these new and full moons, specifically for Aries, military initiative, leadership contests, sudden outbreaks, pioneering risk. We see for Sagittarius, ideology, foreign affairs, expansion, legal or religious conflict. And we see for Leo, rulers, national pride, spectacle, defeat of central authority. Then we see for the earth signs, resources, currency, land, food supply, stubborn resistance to change. For Taurus, new and full moons. We see for Capricorn, government institutions, long-term structures, austerity or reform. And for Virgo, systems, health, infrastructure, labor analysis, critical adjustment. For the water signs, we see Cancer, homeland, borders, public health, emotional security of the populace. Scorpio, shared resources, debt, crises of power, toxicity, irreversible change. Pisces, mass emotion, sacrifice, dissolution of boundaries, epidemics of feeling or belief. And we see for the air triplicity, Gemini, information, transport, treaties, media storms, dual narratives, Libra, alliances, diplomacy, justice, public balance, words rupture, and Aquarius, collective systems, tech, sun, social upheaval, ideology of the group. And that's very, very important to do in Aquarius, and what else we're going to continue seeing with this transit until 2044, which nobody's talking about because they're all scared and pussies. Nobody's able to talk about it, apparently. Alright, Here is a zodiacal distribution of lunation themes by element. And we're also going to look at the elemental emphasis here. Again, basically just looking over fire, Aries, Leo, Sag, initiative, conflict, leadership, crises, and knowing the archetypes for these signs, the elemental tone of lunations, and mundane interpretation. So for Earth, Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn, economy, resources, structural issues. For Air, Gemini, Libra, Aquarius, ideas, treaties, public discourse, and tech. And for Water, Cancer, Scorpio, Pisces, emotion, masses, borders, and sacrifice. Alright, the malefic aspects in event and lunation charts. So Mars and Saturn are the traditional malefics. They're hard aspects to luminaries, to angles, or to each other at the time of a new or full moon, or at the moment of a historical event supply the friction that turns a lunation into crises. So we see primary malefic aspects in mundane charts. Conjunction, fusion, crisis, squares, friction, action, opposition, polarization, and semi-square and sesquicade quadrate, chronic tension. So primary hard aspects used in malefic analysis. And these are the degrees. So 0 degrees, right? That's conjunction. Square shows us it's 90 degrees, 180 degrees, and 45 degrees for semi-square. And now let's go into more detail about Mars aspects, just the aspects of these planets in general, to get more of a feel. So Mars aspects. Mars brings heat, speed, violence, initiative, and blood. A new or full moon conjunct, square, or opposite Mars frequently coincides with military action, accidents, fires, riots, or aggressive political moves. We see Mars-Saturn contacts are especially severe. The combination of force and restriction produces blocked aggression, grinding conflict, or structural violence. We see Saturn aspects. Saturn brings cold, delay, fear, institutional pressure, and endings. Lunations hard to Saturn often mark periods of austerity, governmental crackdown, the death of public figures, or the collapse of overextended systems. Saturn-Mars midpoints and aspects are classic signatures of war footing, martial law, or the hardening of borders. We see combined malefic testimony. When a lunation is simultaneously aspected by both Mars and Saturn, or falls on their midpoint, the collective climate is typically one of high pressure and low room for maneuver. Historical peaks of conflict and systemic stress repeatedly show this triple signature, lunation adding Mars and Saturn. Alright, malefic midpoints, especially Mars, Saturn, in more detail here. So the midpoint between two planets, we know it's a sensitive degree where the combined meaning is concentrated, and among all midpoints, Mars-Saturn is the most consistently linked with endurance under pressure, forced action, hardship, military discipline, and structural violence. When a new or full moon or a major event, ascendant, midheaven, falls on the Mars-Saturn midpoint, or when a transit activates it, the historical record often shows a spike in collective difficulty. So we see Mars, then we have Mars-Saturn midpoint, and Saturn, and this is the axis of endurance, force, and hardship, geometry of the Mars-Saturn midpoint on the ecliptic. Alright, so other significant malefic midpoints. Mars, Pluto, modern, or Mars with the traditional outer malefic signatures, intensity, compulsion, explosive force. Saturn, Pluto, systemic breakdown, historical turning points of great weight. Sun, Mars, and Sun, Saturn, leadership under fire, under restriction. Moon, Mars, and Moon, Saturn, mass emotional volatility or collective depression. In pure traditional practice, the Mars-Saturn midpoint, it remains the primary malefic mean. Modern practitioners expand the set, but the core principle is identical, where the midpoint acts as a hidden trigger degree. And okay, so we're going to look at these historical case studies with the combined signatures, because I like to, get more detailed with you guys. So the following examples illustrate the combined presence of a significant lunation, as well as malefic aspects and or malefic midpoints near major global events. And we see that degrees are approximate and intended for thematic study. So August 1914, New Moon season and the Great War. The period surrounding the outbreak of WW1 featured a tense lunation climate in late Cancer, early Leo degrees, with Mars highly active in Saturn, applying pressure in the relevant mundane charts. The solar eclipse of August 21st, 1914, 27 degrees Leo, further concentrated the signature of wondered leadership and fixed fire conflict. We see Mars-Saturn themes of grinding, industrial scale warfare were already visible in the planetary climate of the preceding months. September 1939, following the invasion of Poland, A lunar eclipse full moon on September 16th at 22 degrees Pisces occurred. Pisces lunations often coincide with mass displacement and the dissolution of previous boundaries. We see concurrent Mars and Saturn activity reinforce the martial and restrictive character of the moment. The combination of a water sign full moon with malefic pressure is a classic signature of collective suffering and the overflow of conflict beyond previous limits. Alright, October 1962, Lunations and Cuban Missile Crisis. Peaked in October 1962, the preceding and concurrent lunations fell under air and fixed sign influence, while Mars and Saturn formed tense patterns with the luminaries and with each other. The crisis is frequently studied as an example of brinkmanship under a sky that combined intellectual, ideological lunation themes, Aquarius Gemini flavor, that's definitely air, with the hard realism of the Malefics. In April 1986, the lunar eclipse of April 24th, to be exact, 1986 at 3 degrees Scorpio, fell 2 days before the Chernobyl disaster. Scorpio rules radiation, hidden toxicity, and irreversible transformation. Malefic involvement, Saturn and Mars signatures in a wider period added the themes of systemic failure and forced containment. The event remains one of the clearest modern illustrations of a water sign lunation, adding malefic climate coinciding with a tech and ecological crises of the underworld. So these are just a few examples so far. Alright, and 2001, total lunar eclipse of July 16, 2000 at 24 degrees Capricorn, together with subsequent lunations in the heavy Saturn-Pluto opposition of 2001, formed part of the celestial backdrop to the 9/11 attacks and the ensuing reconfiguration of global security structures. Capricorn lunations emphasize institutions and the bones of the collective. Malefic midpoints and aspects supply the signature of sudden structural violence and long-term hardening of systems. 2020, the annular solar eclipse, new moon of June 21st, 2020 at 0 degrees Cancer, world point, occurred amid the first global wave of COVID-19. Cancer lunations speak to home, homeland, public health, and emotional security. The wider 2020 sky features strong Saturn, Pluto, and Mars activity, producing a classic combined signature. So we saw sensitive lunation adding heavy malefic pressure, lockdowns, border closures, and collective anxiety unfolded under this climate. And a practical method here for combining the 3 layers. A working procedure for examining any historical or current global moment. Identify the nearest new or full moon or eclipse and its exact degree and sign. Note the element and modality, fire, earth, air, water, and cardinal fixed mutable for the basic collective tone. Scan for hard aspects from Mars and Saturn to the luminaries, the ascendant or the midheaven of the event or national chart. Calculate the Mars-Saturn midpoint and other relevant malefic midpoints and test whether the lunation degree, event angles, or key national points fall upon it. Weigh the combined testimony. Illumination alone is atmospheric. Illumination hard to one malefic is tense. Illumination hard to both malefics or on their midpoint is frequently critical. Allow orb and timing. Effects may peak within days of the lunation or unfold over the following weeks, especially when outer planet configurations support the theme. Alright, here are some appendices. First is a quick reference for lunation sign themes. Lunation themes by sign from mundane work. So of course the sign, element, and primary mundane themes. And we've talked about this a lot before. It's like Aries, fire element, war, initiative, leadership, contest. Taurus, earth, resources, money, land, stubbornness. Gemini, air, media, transport, treaties, dual narratives. Cancer, water, homeland, health, border, security. Leo, fire, rulers, national pride, central authority. Virgo, earth, systems, labor, health, infrastructure. Libra, air, alliances, justice, diplomacy, balance. Scorpio, water, debt, crises, toxicity, irreversible change. Sagittarius, fire, ideology, foreign affairs, expansion. Capricorn, earth, government, institutions, austerity. Aquarius, air, collective systems, tech, upheaval. And Pisces, water, mass emotion, sacrifice, and dissolution. And Appendix B shows selected historical correlation summary with the period, lunation emphasis, malefic signature, and event theme. So illustrative combined signatures and historical events. And Appendix C will show calculating the Mars-Saturn midpoint. So first, August 1914, we see Leo Cancer, Mars and Saturn active, WW1 outbreak. September 1939, Pisces full eclipse, Mars-Saturn climate, WW2 expansion. October 1962, air fixed, malefic tension, missile crises. April 1986, Scorpio eclipse, Malefic period, Chernobyl, 2000, Capricorn, Lunar, Saturn, Pluto, and Mars, structural shock. And June 2020, 0 degrees Cancer eclipse, Saturn, Pluto, Mars, pandemic peak. Alright, so calculating the Mars-Saturn midpoint, we see note the ecliptic longitudes of Mars and Saturn. It's going to be 0 through 360 degrees. Add the two longitudes and divide by 2. If the result falls more than 180 degrees from both planets, add or subtract 180 degrees to obtain the closer midpoint. The near midpoint is usually preferred. Convert the resulting longitude back to sign and degree. Test whether any lunation, angle, or national sensitive point falls within a tight orb, 1 through 2 degrees of that degree. Activation by transit or secondary progression is also noted. Alright, we're going to end the video with a glossary. Just a few reminders. So cardinal signs, Aries, Cancer, Libra, Capricorn, signs of initiation and crises. Lunations here often mark decisive collective turns. Fixed signs, Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, Aquarius, signs of persistence and resistance. Lunations here intensify in trench situations. Hard aspect, conjunction, square, opposition, and semi-square, sesquiquadrate aspects that produce tension, action, or crises. Lunation, a new moon or full moon, the monthly syzygy of sun and moon. Malefic, traditionally Mars and Saturn, planets associated with friction, restriction, conflict, and hardship. Malefic midpoint, especially the Mars-Saturn midpoint, a sensitive degree combining force and limitation. The midpoint is the ecliptic degree, exactly halfway between two planets or points, a concentration of their combined meaning. Mundane astrology, astrology of nations, cities, weather, and collective historical events. Mutable signs, Gemini, Virgo, Sag, Pisces, signs of adaptation and dissemination. Lunations here often involve info, ideology, or mass feeling. New moon, sun moon conjunction, beginning of the lunar cycle, seeding of collective themes. Full moon, sun moon opposition, culmination and illumination of collective themes. Orb, the allowable angular distance within which an aspect or midpoint contact is considered effective. Syzygy, alignment of sun, moon, and earth, new or full moon. And world point, 0 degrees of any cardinal sign, degrees of heightened mundane sensitivity. Thank you for watching this video with peace and love. I hope you learned something, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, see you now.